I'm going to start by talking about conditioning. Conditioning is a learned response, so the body is doing something without the mind even having to get involved. This is important because if we have conditioning around birth and pregnancy and contractions, our body might behave in a way that we don't want it to. Let me explain a little bit about conditioning, and then I'll explain about how this is really important for labour. So imagine you're commuting to work, you drive in a car to work, and you've taken the route so many times that you don't have to think about it anymore. You arrive and you realise, I didn't think if I had to go left or right. You could think about other things. So with birth, if we've picked up stories from family, from friends, from colleagues at work, and maybe they've been ones that show birth in a challenging light, as painful, maybe even as dangerous, this all gets stored in our brain. If we've watched television, and television is all about entertainment and drama, isn't it? So again, these images, these beliefs that we start to build are all stored whether we're aware of it or not. And if they are negative, what can happen is as soon as we hear pregnancy or birth, or we feel that first contraction, or you see your partner with that first contraction, there can be tension. So we don't want that to happen. We want to have a positive response to those things instead. So all the hypnobirthing techniques, the positive affirmations, all the things that we're going to be doing are creating a positive conditioning around birth and pregnancy. Let me give you another example. You may have heard of Pavlov and his experiment with dogs. So he would bring food to the dog kennel, sort of one corner of the room, same corner every time, and every time he brought the food he would ring a bell. And within just the space of 2 weeks, if the dogs heard the bell, they would rush over for the food and start salivating, even though the food wasn't there yet, because there'd always been that connection between the food and the bell. So they'd become to associate one with the other. So if through the hypnobirthing and the positive affirmations we can keep saying again and again, birth is a natural thing, each contraction is bringing you close to your baby, we want contractions to be strong and effective so we meet our baby sooner, those kinds of things. When we practice that in a relaxed state, we start to associate birth and contractions and all the other things with relaxation. So when we first feel that real contraction or see our partner having that contraction, it's not a state of anxiety that we go into, it's a feeling of relaxation. And that really helps the labour progress. Because otherwise what happens is if we have anxiety or fear, that can cause tension in the body and that can cause pain, and it goes around in a cycle. The more pain, the more fear, the more tension, the more fear, the more pain. You can see how it just goes round and round. So just do a little experiment for me. I want you to bring your hand up and create a claw shape. So bring some tension into the fingers. And we're going to take the hand up and down. So really have some tension there. And you can feel it's hard work. It would be tiring very quickly. And you might even start feeling a bit crampy. Shake it out. And then keep the hand relaxed. Take the hand up and down from the wrist. It's really easy. You could do this a much, much longer time. So if we can keep the body relaxed, the uterus, the womb, can do its work more easily. The uterus is a muscular organ. It works like other muscles in the body, that it needs lots of oxygen. It works better if it's relaxed rather than forcing. Let's have another example. Say it's the weekend and you're sitting on the toilet for a poo, and you can relax, take your time, you're reading a book, just waiting for things to happen. It's comfortable. Instead, imagine it's a weekday and you have to get to work. You're already late actually, and you're straining, I've got to get this poo out. You might have had this experience where actually there might be a little bit of blood, it might hurt as the poo comes out, because you're going against the body's natural processes. So that's a little analogy between going for a poo and birth, but we'll come back to this again and again. So you can see that if you're as relaxed as possible, the body can get on with the work it needs to do and not battle against itself. So a lot of the hypnobirthing, the mindfulness techniques are all about quietening the nervous system. So let's come to exactly how this is all working in the brain. We've got three parts of the brain that I want to talk about. The first part is the neocortex, which is the new brain. It's what makes us human. It's responsible for things like language, reasoning, self-awareness, analysis, conscious thought. We wouldn't be human without our neocortex. So it's very helpful most of the time. But you could also think of it as your thinking part of the mind or the critical mind. And sometimes this can get in the way of just letting the body do what it knows how to do. So, for example, if you're very sensitive to language, imagine you've gone into hospital and the midwife says to you, if it's okay, I'd like to examine you, see how far dilated you are. Ah, you're just 3 centimetres. You think, just? Oh, I thought I was at least 6 centimetres by now. And you start feeling dispirited and it sends you down into a downward spiral. For some people, they might not be so sensitive to language. It might be that they are thinking about hypothetical situations. Think, what if this happens? What if that happens? They start catastrophizing. And all of this thinking going on can bring up a stress response and take us out of this relaxed state that we want to be in our body. So that's the neocortex, the thinking part of the mind. We also have the limbic system. So the limbic system's a bit like a filing cabinet, and that's the bit that's holding all the memories and the beliefs that I was talking about in relation to conditioning. So we're going to work with the techniques to have positive conditioning around pregnancy and birth. Otherwise, even if you're not aware of them, those negative ones under the surface will affect how your body reacts as somebody goes into labour. The third part that I want to talk about is the reptilian brain, or sometimes just known as the old brain. It's been there for a very long time as we've evolved. And this controls the instinctive responses to things like reproduction and digestion and birth. So the analogy I was giving before of having a poo, or even better, digestion. You don't sit there after breakfast thinking, right, I'm going to move the food down into my stomach and I'm going to start dissolving it, right? And now I'm going to move it into the intestines. It just happens without your conscious control. We can't actually control that. And the same happens in birth. We can't control when a contraction starts. Right, it would be very convenient now to get going, thank you very much. Or we can't think, I need to dilate 3 centimetres in the next half an hour, thank you. It's out of our control. We can set up conditions to make it more possible, but we can't actually send a signal from the brain to make it happen. All of this is controlled by the reptilian part of the brain. It's these instincts that manage the body. Just like we don't control our temperature, we don't control how much we're sweating. All of this is done and sorted out in the background. So in some ways, we need to get our thinking brain out of the way. We don't want to create a stress response that means that the body shuts down the process of birth. And I really like to think about this in terms of you can have a top-down effect on your nervous system, or you can have a bottom-up effect on your nervous system. So by top-down, I mean things like techniques of mindfulness, where you're calming the thinking mind. It could be breathing techniques where you're counting to keep the brain gently occupied rather than catastrophizing or worrying about things. But it can also be a bottom-up approach, which means that you directly affect the body through things like yoga, moving gently, or putting some music on and just swaying, or even stroking. So if you're stroking your arms, or your partner strokes your arms, or down your back, it has a soothing effect on the body, and that signal sends a signal to the brain, yeah, we're safe, it's all okay. So we can do all of this and have double the impact and keep this reactive part of ourselves quiet, so we don't go into a stress response. So I'd like to do an exercise here. You can pause the video when you need to. You'll need pen and paper, And I want you first of all to think about the things that are worrying you. We're not going to dwell on these for a long time, but I think it is important to bring them up into your awareness. So I'd like you to spend a few minutes writing down all the things that are worrying you, maybe where those anxieties are coming from. Maybe you've been watching One Born Every Minute, or there's a colleague at work who keeps telling you this traumatic story, so you can put the source of it as well if you want. So switch this off until you've written a list. Don't judge what you're writing down, just do it as a stream of consciousness, just whatever comes into your head. And then when you're ready, turn the video back on again. Okay, so well done for doing that. And if it's on a piece of paper that you can roll up into a ball, we're going to do that now. It's not to diminish what you've put on there. If there are some practical things on there, maybe you can get in touch with your midwife and just ask a question, or maybe you need to have a word with that colleague and say, look, please don't tell me your stories, wait until after my baby's born. All of those feelings are very understandable, and we're not diminishing them by screwing up the piece of the paper. Or if you can't rip it out of a book, just fold it over so you don't see it anymore. But we're saying we're going to put these in the past and we're going to move forwards to thinking really positively. And I had a lady recently after a birth workshop and after the birth of her baby, who said, at the time I wasn't quite sure about this, but she said actually it had a big impact. Just symbolically to put those to one side and say I'm choosing to think positive made a massive difference. So now what I'd like you to do is write on a piece of paper all the things that have been giving you a sense of positivity. So it might be stories from friends, it might be things you're writing, it might be seeing a sibling born or a pet born when you were little. Again, just do it as a stream of consciousness, don't judge or edit, nobody else is going to see these. So when you're ready, I want you to switch the video off and just spend a few minutes writing all the things that are positive, that have been helping you think positively about pregnancy and birth. And I'll see you in a minute. Great, so I hope you did take the time to write those things down. The hypnobirthing tracks that are part of the course are full of positive affirmations. So that will be helping you with reconditioning so that you feel really positively about the birth. There's also a website called tellmeagoodbirthstory.com. And that not only has positive birth stories, but it also has a buddying system. So you can match yourself up with somebody who's similar to you, and but further ahead, they've already had their baby and can give you lots of positive reassurance. There are loads of great books. So a classic is Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth. There's Mindful Hypnobirthing. So if you want a hypnobirthing book, that would be the one I recommend. Mindful Hypnobirthing by Sophie Fletcher. There's also one by a male midwife, written more for male birth partners. So it's called Men, Love and Birth. And it has a different take on it, a different perspective. So it's really worth a read. And then also there's lots of great home birth books. So even if you're not planning a home birth, it's a source of really good stories. So there's Home Birth by Abigail Cairns, and there's A Farmer's Home Birth Handbook by Leah Hazard. And I'm sure you'll find other ones out there, but just by focusing on reading positive stories is a great source of conditioning yourself to feel excited and relaxed at the same time about the prospect of the birth. And then of course there are also videos. On the course I'll share some links to YouTube videos, different ones, hypnobirthing, home, hospital, water birth. And it's really good to watch these with your birth partner so they can see that there's a whole spectrum. So not just the dramatic things that they've seen on TV, but also just birth unfolding naturally as undisturbed as possible. Now I want to talk about a concept of birth breaks and birth accelerators. This is a concept that I borrowed from a lady called Emily Nagoski, who wrote a wonderful book called Come As You Are, which is about sex breaks and sex accelerators, but it translates really, really well. So a birth break would be anything that slows down the process of birth. It could be physical, emotional, mental, and some women are going to be more sensitive to particular breaks than others. So I gave the example before of language. If a midwife said, "Oh, you're just 3 centimetres," one woman that might affect a lot. She might feel really dispirited, feeling like she should be further ahead. Another woman, it would just flow over her and not affect her. So we're all different, and part of this is about identifying your own personal breaks ahead of time so you can prepare for them. So some examples of birth breaks are adrenaline. So a physical one is the adrenaline, the stress hormone that can move through our body. An emotional one might be feeling out of control. So that would really put a brake on things. If you're like, why is this happening? Why are they suggesting this intervention? Not feeling you've got enough information. That would be a big brake on the physiological process of birth. It might even make the contractions fade and disappear. And basically all of these birth breaks come down to a feeling of not feeling safe or feeling vulnerable. So if there are particular issues that particularly worry you, it will be good ahead of time to speak with your midwife, or even maybe the supervisor of midwives or a consultant midwife, so that you can put things in place. So for example, I had a lady last year in my class who had had 2 previous births, and she said she always felt a bit out of control. And one night I was thinking about her, and it suddenly popped into my head that maybe it was a question of modesty. She's a Muslim lady, she wears a headscarf, and so the next time I saw her I asked her about it, and she said, "Well, actually that's a really good point, I hadn't thought about it, Tessa, but she did feel sort of exposed." And so I suggested talking to the consultant midwife, and they were able to put in the birth plan something about protecting her modesty. You'd expect that that would be the case for all women, but even the birth partner can get involved and act as a physical barrier. So if the midwife's having to go in and out of the room to get things, he or she could position between the labouring woman and the door and just create a physical barrier so that she feels protected and safe. Yeah, so there are lots of things that can be done. Birth accelerators is about things that speed up the process of birth, that make you feel relaxed and calm and able to let your body get on with it. And again, these can be physical, emotional, mental. And I think it's important to realise that accelerators can be more or less sensitive than brakes. A particular woman might have really sensitive brakes and a number of brakes, things that are bothering her, and not so many things that will help speed up the process of labour. So they're not created equally. So some example of accelerators in terms of physical might be oxytocin, which helps create the contractions, and we'll talk more about oxytocin in a moment. It could be feeling well informed or having a consistent caregiver. So in the past, you might know your midwife, she's in the village, you've met her even before you were pregnant, and then you see her through the pregnancy and she's there for the birth. So she already knows you, she knows what's worrying you, she knows the kind of things that help you laugh. Nowadays, unfortunately, most of the time you'll have a different midwife in pregnancy as you do for the actual labour. You might have a different midwife through pregnancy and see 3 or 5 different midwives, so it's harder for them to know what's bothering you. So instead, the consistent face tends to be the birth partner, and we'll go into much more detail later about how the birth partner can support you. And again, we've got language use. Language is another accelerator, so lots of positive reassurance. Yes, you're doing really well, I'm so proud of you. And basically all of these accelerators come down to feeling safe. So if you like, you can pause the video now and write out a list of things that you can see would act as brakes for you. It might be practical things like you've already got a child and you're worrying about where that child is going to go when you go into labour. And you can make a list of accelerators. Maybe you really love baths, that just helps you relax, and so you can think about how you would use the bath during the first stage of labour while you're still at home. Probably not lying on your back, you can lie on a side to make it comfortable during contractions. So make 2 lists and see what you can do about minimising the breaks. Are there practical steps you can take? And what are the accelerators? Do you need to get some things in, like essential oils? Okay, and then a last part of this puzzle is how the hormones interact with the nervous system. So you may have heard of the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the sympathetic nervous system, if we feel that there's a danger, we often go into 3 different reactions. Flight, which is where we run away. Fight, where we fight the danger or the predator, for example. Or we freeze or play dead. You might have seen an animal on a video that sees a predator and they pretend that they're dead, so the predator just passes on. So these are our instinctive reactions that come from that reptilian part of the brain that I talked about before. So adrenaline is the stress hormone that drives all of this. And what happens when we feel that there's a danger, even if it's not real, if it's all in our minds that we're worrying about this situation, that situation, the body will still respond as if it's a very real danger, like a tiger running after us. The blood goes to your arms and legs so that you're ready to run away or to fight. And that means that it moves away from the uterus, which, like I said before, is a muscular organ. So it needs blood, lots of oxygen to work really well and comfortably. If the blood's gone away, the contractions, even if they've been very regular, they've been lasting a good amount of time, could completely go. And that's very dispiriting. We don't want that to happen. The other thing that happens when we have this high level of adrenaline in our system is that we can get less blood going and, well, less oxygen coming down to the baby. And so sometimes you'll have heard from people, oh, during my labour the baby became distressed and so we had to do X, Y and Z. And sometimes it's as simple as this stress reaction has kicked in. So there's less oxygen available to go to the baby, and so the baby's heart rate changes. So this is a really good reason, again, to try and keep ourselves calm. And another thing that can happen when there's lots of adrenaline is that we can become a bit lightheaded and it becomes harder to make decisions with our thinking brain. We'll just want to run away or fight. So all of the techniques that I'm sharing in this course are about trying to keep the sympathetic nervous system switched off. Adrenaline itself is not a bad thing. We actually have a surge of it at a certain point during the labour that helps our baby to be born. But it's just if we're constantly getting this signal to the body that we're not feeling safe, then we get this stress response and we get the tension, and that becomes more painful or might even shut down the contractions completely. So what's the other side of this? We want to have the parasympathetic system switched on. Sometimes it's called the rest and digest system. So if you've had breakfast, you digest best if you're relaxed. Let me give you another example. This time you've got an interview, a job interview that you're feeling quite scared about, and you've had your breakfast, but it's sitting there. You're not digesting it because the body's in a state of stress and is getting ready to run away from the interview. As soon as the interview's happened, you can relax, and then you can feel that the food's not sitting there. When we have got the parasympathetic nervous system switched on, then the contractions can happen, and it happens in a cycle with oxytocin. Oxytocin is what drives the contraction, and each contraction signals release of more oxytocin. So it goes round and round, and the contractions, will gradually get stronger as more oxytocin is released into the system. As well as this, we get the release of beta endorphins, and these are your body's natural painkillers. They're actually like stronger than morphine. They're really good to have on your side. If you've ever heard somebody say, oh, well, I didn't have any pain relief for my birth, they did, but it was their body's own natural pain relief rather than external pain relief. So if we're feeling relaxed, doing the deep breathing, we can get these endorphins released. You might have had this experience of an endorphin rush. Like if you were exercising, you get to a certain point of exercising. For me, it's when I go to street dance. I can just suddenly feel whoosh. Or it could be if you love dancing, that you're dancing, you're having a great time, and the endorphins just give you that feeling of being uplifted. This is great to have on your side when you're in the birthing journey and labour, because it helps take the edge off the intensity of the contractions, or mean that it's longer until you start to experience them as something that's painful. So with oxytocin, it's sometimes called the love hormone, shy hormone, private hormone. You might hear different explanations. But the idea is that it flows best when you're in a relaxed place. And very often the things that have helped make a baby help the baby be born. So I would imagine that for most of you, you tend to make love in a relaxed place where you don't have strangers watching you, you don't have clinical lighting everything up. You feel generally comfortable. So that's why it's called the shy or the private hormone. It works best when we're feeling relaxed. So that's why sometimes people, as they feel the contractions increase, go and hide in the toilet, because it's a smaller room. They feel more private there. They don't feel watched. So again, it's worth thinking about these things. While you're home, it's easy. You can put the lighting down. You can light some candles. You can make a nice nest somewhere. And you can take some of these things into hospital with you, whether it's the midwife-led unit or the delivery suite. You can take fairy lights, you can take LED candles, you can simply have a shawl that you put over your face to take some of the glare away. So there's lots of things that you can do to make the right hormones move through the body. With adrenaline, the stress hormone, and oxytocin, this love hormone, it's like a seesaw. So if adrenaline starts creeping up, the oxytocin gets lower. If you're making the environment nice and calm and you feel relaxed and safe, and it goes the other way, the adrenaline comes down and the oxytocin is high, the contractions are regular and getting you closer to meeting your baby. Let's do some practical exercises to help this calming and soothing of the nervous system. So have a little bit of a wiggle and a stretch. You can change position, and then I want you to close your eyes. Become aware of your breath, breathing in and breathing out. We're going to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. So breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And this is called the golden thread breath. And so as you breathe out, I want you to imagine there's a golden thread coming out from the mouth, across the room, outside of the room, for as long as your exhalation continues. So breathing in through the nose and then a slow breath out through the mouth, making it last, nice and easy. So you might imagine that there's a sort of target outside of the room and you're trying to reach it with your breath, and if you go really slowly and gently, you'll be able to blow all the way across to that target. But I want you to keep the face very relaxed. So rather than a pout, like a blowing out a candle, we're not doing that. It's the face is relaxed, lips getting softer, tongue soft in the mouth, and the jaw really relaxed. So have some space between the upper and lower teeth, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And if your nose is blocked, it's fine to breathe in through the mouth. Just make the exhalation a bit longer and slower. Okay, well done. And you don't have to watch all the way through the video to practice these breathing techniques again. You can find these separately in the course. All right, so let's try another one. So when you're ready, closing your eyes. And we're going to count this time on the exhalation. So let's breathe in. And as you breathe out, thinking 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, relax. And it's really good to get your birth partner to practice this with you because they might need it as well. They might have the adrenaline increasing. So breathing in and breathing out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, relax. Let's do that again together, breathing in and out 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, relax. And now we're going to go down through the body as we're counting. So let's breathe in. As you breathe out, relaxing the head, 5, relaxing the shoulders, 4, relaxing the torso, 3, relaxing the legs, 2, relaxing the feet, 1, and let go. So coming down through the body. Let's do it again, breathing in, relaxing the head, 5, shoulders, 4, torso, 3, legs, 2, and feet, 1, and let go. And if you like, you can put a colour with this. You might think of a calming blue colour washing down through the body, or a tingling, whatever helps you make this feel more real to you. So let's do it one more time, breathing in, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and let go. Great. So you can do this at any point. It might be while you're still at home, it might be between contractions, it might help during a contraction. There's no right or wrong. You can use it whenever it helps. It's particularly good, any kind of counting technique is particularly good for refocusing. So again, that pesky midwife who said just 3 centimetres, if that knocked you out of your concentration and your focus, you could do a counting technique, so you're helping to relax and come back into focusing on every breath. Okay, let's do one more technique, and then that will be the end of this particular video. So we're going to do a hypnotic deepener. With anything hypnotic, you're in control. You can only relax as much as you want to. And this works really well if your birth partner is talking you through it, because you know that they're right there with you. So I'm going to turn sideways a little bit. So you might be able to see my chest rising and falling, or you can look at my mouth and the breath coming in and out that way. And what we're going to do is count down. Every time I breathe out, we're counting 1 down. So I'm going to start at 10, next exhalation 9, next exhalation 8, next exhalation 7, and so on all the way through. And anything where we're counting down towards 0 has this very relaxing effect for the brain. I'm also going to put in a few sentences like, oh, you're relaxing more and more, but the counting is enough. If you want to practice with your partner, you could start just with the counting. It's fine if you have a giggle. That helps the right hormones flow. And as you get more confident, you can put some of the sentences in like, you're relaxing, you're drifting, whatever comes to mind. So after we've gone through this, if you're watching this with your partner, have a go and have a practice. And remember, things do get easier with practice. So if it doesn't work the first time, don't worry. So breathing in, breathing out, 10. Breathing in again, 9. 8. 8. Relaxing more and more. 7. Relaxing down through the arms and the legs. 6. Relaxing all the way to the hands and the feet. 5. Relaxing emotionally. 4. Drifting more and more. 3. Letting go just as much as you want to. 2. Feeling so much more relaxed now. 1. Feeling calmer and calmer. 0. Feeling so calm. And then opening your eyes. How was that? What you might have noticed with me is that my breath was actually slowing down. It was becoming longer and deeper. And so the person that's counting is having to watch really carefully for the person's exhalation so that they match and slow down as well. And then that gives this really amazing relaxation effect. So as I say, have a practice. Doesn't matter if it doesn't work 100% the first time, but it's one of the most powerful ways of really feeling that somebody's there with you. So you can have a go at delivering it to each other so that you both get to experience the effect of it. When I've done it in class, sometimes people are particularly susceptible, and as the counting goes on, they start folding over. They're just so relaxed, they're almost asleep. So like anything, the more you practice, the easier it gets into that frame of mind.